didn't think I did, but, at certain mile points, they want to check, oh, you're old enough, you should have this. Really? So they check you and then they tell you, no, you're good, etc. And he's been trying to call me for like 2 weeks, so that's why I broke decorum here and decided to take that. How far did you get?
We discussed Thai pizza.
Ah, well, that's you. So you're still on desire at that point.
I might have reached passion.
Passion for me.
Yeah.
So passion, I usually think of them as the spirited folks, and not in the sense that they have spirit and the rest of us don't, but in the sense that their reward is honor. So who do I think of in this category? Well, it's the militia that guard the town, the polis. They have those that will fight, put on the armor and run out and fight the Spartans or whoever comes. And their virtue is courage. And that's an important virtue. Without people with courage, the town isn't going to survive. So you need these people, right? The military, basically. I'm retired Army myself, and I remember you really are happy to get your awards, when you get the different awards. The one thing that bugged me was when I retired and I was given my highest last award, I never bought the new, plaque thingy, to put them on, so I never got a picture with me with that, it was, oh shoot, well, rats, but in any case, you sacrifice a lot for these military awards, even to the extent that you would sacrifice your life, for your country. That's the kind of thing that is associated with this. And the medal for this group is silver. And there's fewer people in that group typically. And how do they get there? They actually start out in the with all the other kids and so on. But if they have that kind of character that you could identify, this is the kind of child that will become one of the police, and be willing to sacrifice themselves, or the fireman that runs into the burning building, to rescue your cat, things of that sort. Hopefully he's got enough sense. He doesn't have so much courage that he runs in when the building is about ready to collapse for a cat. I mean, cats have souls too, but are they really important enough to risk your own life in that kind of a situation? Probably not. It depends. You have to know. And that's the thing, that's their virtue, is they know how much courage they need in this particular situation. Don't be an idiot, that kind of thing. But at the same time, if you're the only one that can do it and it absolutely has to be done, you're the one that goes and does it, right? So these individuals kind of come out of the lower group. And once you reach about 50, so they argue. It's kind of interesting how the age comes into this. Plato, by the way, having seen what happened to Socrates for corrupting the youth, felt like he shouldn't corrupt the youth himself. So as far as he was concerned, the point at which you begin philosophical education should be around 50. Not when you're a child, not when you're young enough that the parents are going to get upset with you. In fact, he argues that it's really kind of important for you not to teach this kind of stuff to people when they're so young that they haven't had their career yet. They ought to have their career, do their duty for the state by being a worker or by being a soldier before they begin getting into these questions which might change their point of view about how they should act in these different things and so on. But once you hit around 50, this is the ideal age apparently for you to start studying philosophy. And philosophy for them meant studying things in general, right? It wasn't like they had philosophy courses, but they, had all the other courses that they could take. I was at a book group yesterday with a bunch of people that were at least my age or roughly around my age, and I mentioned Plato's Apology, and they all looked at me like, "What's that?" How on earth do educated people, some with PhDs, not be familiar with Plato's Apology? That just seemed wrong. But okay, that's clearly still possible. But in any case, reason are for those that are at the top of this. The Aristoi, the best in the Republic, they're the best, and they're the ones that ought to be the ones who are the political leaders of the Republic, because they're the ones that have studied these kinds of questions about justice and so on, and so ought to be the ones that are there to lead things. And so they're the wise. So wisdom is the virtue of the top class, and the top class is gold in the medals and so on. And so that's why you also have the reference to the philosopher king. You've heard of that. It doesn't mean you have to have a philosophy major to be king. No, but the idea that these are the wise people of the community, they're the ones that are the best to rule. And they also should, because of their education, not be the kind of individuals that would want everything for themselves, not be concerned about the society. The society's best interest should be one with their best interest. Well, we look at the various governments that are based really on this republic, the aristocratic governments. The idea was that the aristocracy were the best. It's an elitist philosophy. So this kind of philosophy is really, I think, what gives us the whole idea that there are elites, that there are some people better than others. Have you heard this as part of the discussions lately? The arguments between the different political parties. The argument that a conservative feels that there are elites that ought to be the ones in charge, that some people are better than others. You've heard this? It's still embedded in our culture. And where does it, we could trace it at least to Plato. I don't know that we could trace it further back. Not because it wasn't there, but because we just don't have sources to show us where that came from. So this is, the folks that are likely to want to know these kinds of questions, and their reward, the reward for being that kind of person is not money, not medals for being, the Nobel Prize, etc. We give those, but at the same time, their reward is figuring something out that annoyed the heck out of them, solving the paradox, solving the problem. What is justice? What is, and I should mention, justice then turns out, remember, to give each his own, to be the virtue of the entire society. So the good society is set up so that each person is in their particular niche where they're happiest. And then you have a society that's kind of as happy as a society could be, because everybody's getting what they want out of that society, right? You could think about different modern versions of this, Orwellian examples of it, or Huxley, Aldous Huxley, right? If you're thinking of Brave New World, how many of you are familiar with Brave New World versus 1984? Okay, one person? Wow, not even the C.S. Lewis fan. How about that? Well, the interesting they were mandatory reads in high school years ago. I don't know if people still require it, but Brave New World was a a dystopia, right? That's a whole interesting thing where we get the word dystopia, because we have utopia, which is EU, which is a good society, and we have a utopia, the letter U, topia, which is a dystopic society. But then we create the concept of a dystopic to indicate this is a society that's not a paradise at all, right? It's totally screwed up. And so both of those novels were depicting a particular kind of dystopia. The Brave New World was the kind of image where it had reached a level where everybody had everything they could possibly want, and they could know as much as they wanted, no problem, but they also had the choice of taking soma. So there was like a medication that they could take that would make them high. And guess what? Everybody pretty much decided they just wanted to be high all the time. So nobody took advantage of the opportunity to know everything that the society knew. Well, I mean, today we think that's the internet. You know, you could be using the internet to find out all the knowledge that's out there, or you could be watching cat videos, I guess, right? You know, which, you know, cat videos are cute, you know, that kind of thing. And I don't mean from the musical Cats, although I really like that. And
So in that situation, is that they're given the choice between the lower pleasures and the higher pleasures, so they can choose the higher pleasure themselves or the lower pleasure?
Excellent. And it's so disappointing how few people are interested in taking advantage of how absolutely free information is to know as much as they can. And we become siloed because we find a particular group of people that all agree with our particular view of things, and so we entrap ourselves in just the people that are spreading that point of view, and you don't open yourselves up to find out other things. The other book, 1984, talked about a world where totalitarian states took over and they used doublespeak in order to fool everybody into not really knowing what the heck is going on. Because the one day the news has us fighting this country, but the next day they're our allies and we're fighting this country. So you eventually get to the point where you're just so confused you don't know anything. So that was that was probably an image based by Orwell on the Soviet Union as he was beginning to see it at the time. So you get two different dystopias, and as far as I know, all the people that compare them say that we're actually closer to the Brave New World view than the 1984 view. But so justice is what we're after for Plato. And we could trace this back, and the aristocratic view is that these are the individuals that are the elite. People basically have a certain type of character. You really can't train them. If you're born of the elite, you're naturally going to be inclined to be the top. And that's, so we'll send you to Eton and get your basic education. Then you could go on to Cambridge or Oxford, and then you go on and then become the prime minister. And it seems like up until our current, the British prime minister today, who didn't go that route. That's kind of like, that's how the British did everything. They were all friends, and the ones that became the prime ministers. So that's kind of the way an awful lot of societies work, is based on that. And we still have an awful lot of that embedded in us. And we still have the arguments over that. Are there individuals that have a certain type of character that ought to be the ones that really should rule, as opposed to, should we have a democracy? Both Plato and Aristotle thought that a democracy was just about the worst form of government. And the reason for it is that people, once they get used to the idea, decide to vote for things that they want, but not vote to pay for them. And so what happens is the democracy ends up becoming bankrupt. Well, they didn't know that we could just make our own money. That pretty much, at least temporarily, solved our problem. Plus, we get to borrow money from China, which is another pretty cool thing. So we haven't collapsed totally as a result of our deciding to spend as much money as, how many trillions of dollars are we in debt? Anybody know this moment? Actually, you have to check, right? Because it's constantly going, if you've ever seen
Close to 50?
50.
Close to it, maybe? That's a rough estimate from when I last saw it.
No kidding. Wow.
I could be completely wrong though.
Okay. Let me go back to the Manos for a little bit. The Republic is considered by some to have been, I think I've mentioned there were 3 periods, right, for Plato's dialogues. The first were kind of, the early ones were based on who Socrates really was, and I used the word asshole, basically, because he messed everybody up, and infuriated everyone, asking questions and not answering them. But then you get the middle period, and these are the dialogues that Plato writes, clearly creating this new Platonic idealism. And then you have the final dialogues, which are kind of the ones that criticize idealism. Parmenides is one of those, and I think Aristotle had a lot to do with that period. But the Meno